Good evening. Tonight we are on section 1.4. It covers literal equations and formulas. Now, if you look at the gray box on page 29, it says you are going to learn to solve problems using equations in more than one variable. And that's what a literal equation is. A literal equation is an equation that has two or more variables. When you work with literal equations, you can use the methods you have learned in this chapter to isolate any particular variable. Here's what it means. I want you to look at the solvent at the top of the page. So in the solvent space at the top of the page, I want you to write the following equation. 10x plus 5y equals 80. In this equation, we have two variables. Therefore, it's a literal equation. What I'm going to show you is that you can actually solve any equation you want for either letter. In this problem, you could solve for the x or the y, so we're going to do both. So let's first get the x by itself. If you get the x by itself, we want to first move the plus 5y. So we're going to subtract 5y, subtract 5y. We are then going to have 10x equals, now you cannot take 80 minus 5 because they are not like terms, so we're just going to put 80 minus 5y. You could also write it as negative 5y plus 80. Either one would be an acceptable answer. Then you're going to divide everything by 10. So if you divide everything by 10, so now let's simplify. That would give us x equals 80 divided by 10 is 8, minus 5 divided by 10, so that'd be 1/2 y. Therefore, we just solved the equation for x. Now we also can solve the equation for y. So let's take the same equation. 10x plus 5y equals 80. Let's subtract. We want to get the y by itself. So now we're going to get rid of the plus 10x. So we have to subtract 10x, subtract 10x. That gives us 5y equals. Now this does not give us 80 minus 10. We don't get 70x. We're going to leave it as negative 10 plus 80, or 80 minus 10x. I then divide everything by 5. That would give us 80 divided by 5, which is 16, minus 10 divided by 5, which is 2x. So now let's look at the got it problem on page 29. This problem involves two parts. It says to solve this equation, 4 equals 2m minus 5n for m. That means m is the variable we want to get by itself. So that's what we're going to do first. What would you want to do? If you wanted to leave the 2m here, what are you going to get rid of? You're going to get rid of the minus 5n. So how do you get rid of a minus 5n? You're going to add 5n. So that would be you'd be left with 4 plus 5n, or 5n plus 4 equals 2m. Now you want to divide everything by 2. So that would give us 4 divided by 2, which is 2, plus 5 halves n equals m. So that would be our first answer. Our second answer wants us to plug in the values of n to find the values of m. So it's telling you, what are the values of m when n equals these three numbers? Negative 2, 0, and positive 2. So all we do is plug them in. So we could have m equals 5 halves times negative 2 plus 2. M equals 5 halves times 0 plus 2. And m equals 5 halves times 2 plus 2. So we replace the value of n with negative 2, 0, and 2. Now this is extra work that I would expect you as an advanced student that you can do in your head. But I'm showing you the steps. So negative 2 times 5 halves. Now if you don't remember how to do that, negative 2 times 5, which is negative 10. Negative 10 divided by 2 would be negative 5. So that would give you negative 5 plus 2. So the first value would be m equals negative 3. Then we take 5 halves times 0 plus 2. Well, that's just 0 plus 2, so you get m equals 2. Then you get 2 times 5, which is 10, divided by 2, which is 5, plus 2, which is 7. So the three values would be negative 3, 2, and 7. Let's do practice A, number 1, on the top of page 30. The problem asks to solve the equation for y, then find the value of y for each value of x. Now, if you feel comfortable, pause the video, just do it yourself, and then fast forward to see if you get the same answer I do. Otherwise, you can follow along with me. The first thing we want to do is get the y by itself. So I want to get rid of everything else except this y. So the first thing I have to move is the other term. I have a plus x. So how do I move a plus x? I'm going to subtract x on both sides. That leaves me with negative 4y equals. Now once again, you could have negative x minus 4 or negative 4 minus x. It's completely up to you. So then you have to divide everything by negative 4, because what's the opposite of times negative 4? It would be divide by negative 4. So you divide everything by negative 4. Now this is where you have to be careful. Y equals. Remember, there's a 1 here. So this is just a negative divided by a negative, which is positive. So that's just going to be positive 1/4 x. A negative 4 divided by negative 4, that's plus 1. So now you want to take all three of these values and plug them in. So let's start with negative 2. Now once again, you can do this in your head. Negative 2 times 1/4 is negative 1/2, because that's negative 2/4. So it'd be negative 1/2 plus 1. 1 minus a half is positive a half. Now I want to plug in positive 4. 4 times 1 is 4, divided by 4 is 1, or just 4 divided by 4 is 1. So that's going to be 1 plus 1, which is 2. And then let's plug in 6. 6 divided by 4, you can do that, or you can take 6 times 1 divided by 4, that would be 6/4. 6/4 simplifies into 3 halves plus 1. If you wanted to make this 1.5 or 1.5 plus 1, that's fine. 1.5 plus 1 would be 2.5, or you could leave it as 5 halves. This is where it becomes just a little bit weird. So we have a got it problem. Now if you follow along, above that, at the shaded region, it says, when you rewrite literal equations, you may have to divide by a variable or variable expression. When you do so in this lesson, assume that the variable or variable expression is not equal to 0. Because if you divide anything by 0, you get something that's not defined. So make sure you understand, when you divide anything by 0, it's not 0, it's undefined. So we're going to solve this equation here. It says negative t equals r plus px. We want to get the x by itself. Remember one thing. You always want to get rid of the add or subtracting of whatever you're doing first. Then you're going to get rid of the division or multiplication. So what I see here is I see this px. But then I see this plus r. Now remember, this plus here goes with the p. This is a plus r. So how do you get rid of a plus r? You subtract r. So you just have negative t minus r equals px. So how do you get rid of a times p? Well, what's the opposite of times p? You divide by p. So you would have x equals negative t minus r divided by p. Or you could have had this. Remember, you learned this the other day. You can separate it into a problem that looks like this. Either one of these is an acceptable answer. You can either divide everything by p or each individual term by p. But it means the same thing, so either answer would be acceptable. Let's do practice A now. Number 3. 4 times x minus b equals x. So we want to get the x by itself. So let's first distribute. That would give us 4x minus 4b equals x. We want to get the x's on one side. Remember, the x is what we want by itself, so pretend everything else is a number. So you want to get this x here and this x on the same side. So I'm going to move the x over. So the opposite of plus x is subtract x. 4x minus 1x, that gives me 3x. The minus 4b comes down. And then 1x minus itself, that means I'm left with 0. Now I want to move this minus 4b over here to this side. Now remember, all you're doing is the opposite. So what's the opposite of minus 4b? It moves over here, it becomes plus 4b. Because you added 4b to both sides. Now you want to get rid of a times 3. So we divide both sides by 3. So x equals 4b over 3, or 4/3 b. Let's do example 4 now on the next page. A equals capital B xt plus c. I want to get the x by itself. You have no like terms, no parentheses to get rid of, so here's my x. I want to move the plus c. Subtract c, subtract c. That gives me capital A minus c equals b x t. Now this is a little weird. I want to get rid of a times b and a times t. So how would you get rid of a times b? You divide by b. How would you get rid of a times t? You divide by t. So how would you get rid of a times bt? You would divide everything by both b and t. Now you can divide each of these by bt or the whole thing by bt. So these b's cancel and t's cancel, so you're just left with x equals a minus c over b times t. And there's your answer. We're going to break this section up into two parts. So we are going to finish here with these formulas. And then we're going to stop, and then on Monday, we'll continue along with the second part of this video. So what I want you to do is read the gray section where it says a formula. A formula is an equation that states a relationship among quantities. Formulas are special types of literal equations. It's important to note that all formulas are always literal equations. Some common formulas are given below. Notice that some of the formulas use the same variables, but the definitions of the variables are different. So if you take a look at all those formulas. Now remember, any equation that has two variables or more is called a literal equation. Some literal equations are formulas because they actually have a meaning. They mean area, base, volume, perimeter, circumference, Pythagorean theorem. They mean different things.